Do you know? Do you know? Have you heard the news? There stands tall a school for the children of fairy tales, to repeat the cycle or else something grim may happen. But rumor has it, not all students are loyal and royal. They say some brave seek to rebel against their penned fate. However, you must be careful down this path, for there are some rules you truly can't break, lest the worst might happen. Do you know what they are? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know what they are? Hey, you don't think people are going to be really confused by this whole reference bit, are they? Nah, everyone's watched Revolution go Utsuna. This is a whole universal thing. I haven't. I'm gonna kill you! I'm gonna kill you! You're dead, man!
Weird.
So, I'm actually a pretty big fan of Ever After High. I mean, being a fan of Monster High, it makes complete sense that I'd also like its sister series, although I actually got into Ever After High first, with it being my introduction into Monster High G1, thanks to all the talk and the concept art that was floating about online, about that cancelled crossover movie we never got, just before Monster High's unfortunate reboot to Gen 2. But hey, at least you still got a book. That's something, right? Free cheers for books! For those that might not be in the know, Ever After High was a fashion doll franchise created by the toy conglomerate Mattel in 2013, to act as a sister series to their new hit franchise, Monster High, where instead of following the children of famous monsters and mythical creatures, it's the children of famous fairy tales, which off the bat, that is such a good premise. Mattel were literally hitting both sides of the market, creating spooky and edgy alternative dolls for monsters that the kids and teens were clamoring for, but also the more pastel, classically regal princess dolls that parents were more used to and comfortable with buying at the time. And I mean, compared to Monster High, the dolls were definitely different. I know some people refer to them as pancake faces, but that just feels a bit too mean. But also if the boot fits... Oh, they're nice, I swear. No, but seriously, they're nice. Gorgeous even, depending on the character or line. My personal favourites are Ashlynn Ella, Briar Beauty, and Cedarwood, and who knows, maybe one day I'll actually buy one of them. But that's not today. Ever After High had a pretty successful run, spanning 5 core books, additional reading material, an animated series of multiple specials, and a few webisodes sprinkled here and there. The premise was simple. All of the children of popular fairy tale characters have started to attend Ever After High boarding school to sign the Storybook of Legends and begin preparing themselves for repeating their parents' tales. Just like the parents did before them, and theirs before them, and theirs before. Listen, you get the gist, it's a generational ceremony. And our 2 key main leads are introduced. Apple White, daughter of Snow White, who's keen to continue her family's legacy and live up to her mother's image by signing the book. And Raven Queen, daughter of the Evil Queen, who's having doubts about becoming a villain, poisoning her friend, and being imprisoned for the rest of her life, so in refusing to sign the book, incidentally forms the Rebels group, and kicks off our story of whether characters should follow fate or create their own destiny. I think like a lot of people, I was a little skeptical going in, as the initial premise reads very simple and done before, but what truly carried it for me was the character writing, and the overarching story. So many of you complain about wanting more complex female characters, yet half of you couldn't even handle Apple White. And if you still can, there's the door.
There's the door, bitch!
Where I feel Monster High has very strong character writing too, its stories were very one and done, rarely carrying over elements between them, aside from newly introduced characters, maybe a few background lines, unless you're one of Frankie's new love interests.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
But Ever After High adapted its story in arcs, allowing it to gradually develop the cast one by one, flipping the expectations you would have on them over time, and putting things to an entirely different context, while also building upon this bigger main story thread, becoming a bigger and bigger problem, before the show just sort of wraps up as a freedom of choice and everyone gets to move on thing. With the books having Shadow High, the Monster and Ever After High crossover as its ending. And it was a bit more of an insane end, but also more of a concrete ending with better wrap-up of character arcs. So you're probably wondering, hey Alpine, this all sounds so good and well put together, but Ever After High was so successful like Monster High, whatever happened to it? To which I'd have to agree, this is a well put together video. No, wait, don't go, please. Wait. But really, with the success of the dolls and the trajectory of the series, what actually could have gone wrong for Mattel? So, I've been trying to avoid saying a certain word, but it's sort of impossible to escape. But the biggest reason to blame for Ever After High's sudden drop in quality and then disappearance can be pinned on Disney and the Descendants franchise. Now, this is a bit of a messy topic, with a key question being, who copied who? To which I, nor anyone really has the answer for. Just a little word of mouth from behind the scenes, but to make a long story short, Disney didn't like Mattel making Ever After High because they felt it was too similar to Descendants, which was also in production at the time. Note, we actually have no idea who thought of the idea first, let alone if any of them was copying each other, but knowing how cutthroat the doll industry could be sometimes, someone probably copied someone. Disney then revoked their Disney license from Mattel and gave it to Hasbro to start making Disney princess dolls. Descendants was then released as a straight-to-TV movie in 2015 to extreme success and notoriety. Descendants dolls then hit the market being cheaper than Ever After High dolls, and it definitely shows, making it more appealing to parents, but it also had that iconic Disney name attached to it, solidifying their place on the shelf. Just like with Monster High G2, Mattel starts to cheapen the quality and production of Ever After High to try and price match with Disney and Descendants, but it just doesn't work and popularity is fading. Not having that secure Disney money, and just having spent a bunch of money redesigning Barbie back in 2013, Mattel retires Ever After High in 2016, with the series going quiet since. Now this is a very stripped back, rushed retelling of the events, but if you like a more in-depth look into the topic, I really recommend DarlingDollz video over-explaining the Ever After High and Descendants feud, which is where I got most of my facts from. And while you're there, maybe also check out their Ever After High in Defense of Apple White video. That's a personal fave of mine, and it helps try to paint a fairer picture of Apple, since the fandom is very ready to jump her at any given moment. Are you ready to die, Apple White? Well, after watching Wicked back in November, that's my line. I may or may not have been thinking a lot about Ever After High and how some of the roles fit characters pretty well. Wink wink, nudge nudge. And since so many series like Monster High and Winx have been graced with another generation and a chance at telling their stories, and with Mattel now actually working with Disney on creating the Descendants movies and dolls, we all know Ever After High isn't getting that G2 anytime soon. But that's where I thought I come in. Since the franchise isn't going to leave my brain anytime soon, why don't I try my hand at pitching a new generation? Rewrite the story and characters a little, redesign them in a different coat of paint, and you get to hear all about it. So without further ado, why don't we crack open this book and see where this story starts. Some say the Storybook of Legends created the world. Others say the world created the Storybook of Legends. But either way, we have the book to thank for the story of life that has flourished since its inception. Now, things were a bit boring for a bit. Land forming here, plants growing and bearing fruit there, but it wasn't until the appearance of people who began to forge their own fairy tales that the book and world itself truly expanded. Magic brought prosperity all across the land. However, every story has its end. And with no new stories having appeared in the book, the world was threatened with darkness and destruction. To delay the world's end, a solution was found, formed from the collaboration of heroes to villains and fairies. It was decided that the only way to stop the world's doom was to repeat the story again, this time with the new generation. And just like that, the book restarted, back to page 1, A Snow White's Tale, and order and balance was once again restored. However, in a world of repetition, you can only outrun an inevitable end of a story for so long. When seams start appearing in this perfect structure, all it takes is a rebellious raven to unravel the whole thing. But is that always the right choice? And can things be so easily put back together? With the introduction of another generation, we're about to find out. Beginning this fairy tale, and starting us off today, we have the one and only Raven Queen, daughter of the Evil Queen, 12th generation and the first rebel. For her concept, I ran through a lot of ideas, with it taking me till the third try to really find a balance I liked. My idea was to really push this sharp, gothic, almost Lolita style, kinda like Baby Metal, but keep a bit of an academic neat side like Shadow High. I replaced her feather neckpiece with a more natural traditional frilled collar, framed with a black regular collar and a vintage layer jambot collar with a purple gemstone side. That was a lot of collars I just said there. I also wanted to keep the layer skirt concept she had, but a bit more modernized and saturated. Kind of like how I also kept her hair the same tones and similar in style, but a little more casual and preppy. Kind of like Glinda's from Wicked, but with locks. Of course she's decked out head to toe in silver jewelry, since that is her color. but I didn't think her dark gloomy makeup would fit as well, so I changed it to a more sharp, cat-eyed pink and burgundy look. Now with the concept all explained, let's head over to the speed drawer for a more in-depth character talk. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, I watched Wicked a couple of times. Okay, maybe a lot of times, and I was really inspired by elements of Elphaba's character that I wanted to apply to Raven. I think, like Elphaba, Raven has been mistreated and misunderstood most of her life, with judgment being thrusted upon her for being wicked, cruel, and evil. But at the same time, people only truly looked for those qualities in her, because it meant she was living up to her role as the next evil queen. While her mother revels in this as she sees her daughter becoming just as vile as her from her reflective prison, it was her father, Good King, or rather, just King, who tried to be a positive influence in Raven's life, raising her with independence, encouraging Raven's hobbies such as writing and music, as well as giving her the freedom of choice. No matter what people may tell her, or rather want her to be, Raven is a strong, courageous, and mindful girl. And it's thanks to her father's support that she finally feels ready to question fate, knowing that there has to be a better way to solve things, and free her and many other family trees from eternal persecution. Like Apple, Raven is deeply entwined in the Snow White fairy tale, being the first fairy tale in the Storybook of Legends, which trickles down and triggers various other fairy tales to occur, which for a 15-year-old girl sure is a lot of pressure to have on your shoulders to play the villain in the story. If she doesn't do this, then everyone's lives are ruined. I think a really cruel element would be making Apple and Raven childhood friends. Two girls inseparable at the hip that did almost everything together, all thanks to her dad who wanted to be a positive influence in her life, to distract from what people may think or demand from her. Despite their little spats and arguments, they were always there for each other, so how could Raven ever bring herself to harm Apple in any way, let alone a poisoned coma? Despite this, I think Raven's biggest struggle, apart from her fate, would be the use of magic. Magic is something only a few characters actually have, some royal, but also a lot of villains. With that in mind, I think there'd be this big stigma towards magic as a whole. Unless you're a fairy, it's seen as a cheap and quick solution for jobs, with only a few handed people being able to truly utilize it for good or sacrificial for others' needs. Because of this, Raven has to fight the temptation to choose the easy path via her power most of the time, as by doing so, she's only reinforcing people's image of her as a villain, and thus signing the Storybook of Legend being fated, which means she often chooses to try and solve issues through alternative means via her resourcefulness and intuitive nature. It's because of this she dedicates herself to finding a solution to the storybook, as there has to be another way to maintain the balance other than repeating the same stories. However, just because Raven isn't on the dark side, doesn't mean she can't enjoy the fashion sense. She loves her Gothic Lolita style, with elements of traditional Goth Victorian aesthetic slipped in, with her frills, black lace, and bold patented purples drawing eyes. Apart from being the first to rebel, Raven's reason was the easiest of everyone's, being something that sat on her mind since she was a child. She refuses to follow her destiny of wickedness and isolation, harming her childhood best friend Apple by poisoning her into a coma, and being imprisoned in a mirror for the rest of her life, which shocker? Raven never meant for her action of rebellion to cause such a reaction and stir among students, and incite the story to unfold. But despite her uncertainty as a leader, she takes it if it means helping to save others who are doomed to suffer like her. However, despite being sure there must be another way to solve the book, is Raven's path truly the best pick? What if the rumor of people disappearing wasn't such a tall tale after all? And with the Snow White being the first tale in the Storybook of Legends, her choice deprives everyone of their choice to go along with their own fates. Hopefully, Raven can find a solution to the world's end before the book closes once and for all. And here's the finished result. I know it's pretty close to the concept sketch, but I think the refining of all the detailing and textures is what ties it all together for me. That, and I love how the hair turned out. It really reads as a more modern take on the original style. Now, is this a plausible doll design? No. But it probably could work for a 2D rigged show, so that's a win for me. Either way, I love it, and I hope you like it too. Descending from the same fairy tale, we can't leave out our second protagonist and vital role in Raven's destiny, Apple White. Daughter of Snow White, 12th generation and proud royal. For her concept, I wanted to portray something still very fashionable yet regal, but also a little more academic and befitting of a school environment. A little like Glinda's wardrobe, you say? Okay, I promise I'll stop with the wicked comparisons for now. But I wanted something more stripped back yet still fancy, that can make Apple's other gowns and fancy dresses stand out more on royal occasions, and not just like an everyday thing for her. I mean, being that perfect 24/7 must take a toll eventually. Her hair is similar to her G1 look, but I went for more of a half up, half down ponytail design. Her jacket's a lot longer and more frilled, her skirt more rounded and apple-like, with a ruffled royal pattern, a little like Princess Peach's dress, and I changed her strappy heels to be covered by these cute spats to give into this formal look. And despite not changing too much of her overall design, I at least wanted to make Apple smaller and rounder to really help contrast Raven's sharp and tall stature. But now you know my design thoughts, let's get into her character. Whereas Raven has spent most of her life having a negative influence thrusted upon her, Apple spent most of her life pampered and smothered in a positive influence. Horseback riding, etiquette classes, tea parties, galas, slumber parties, trips to other realms. Apple got it all, and whenever she wanted. After all, a Snow White always gets what they want. It's only right, and only because they are good. Who cares if she doesn't have silky black hair? It's not like the maids whisper about it in the halls. Who cares if she's more peachy than Snow White? Nothing a little makeup and foundation can't hide. Who cares about the rumors that she actually needs glasses? A Snow White is always perfect, even in her vision. In my adaptation of Apple, I really wanted to push the metaphor of the glass coffin, with it being a stand-in for how she shuts people out of her life and hides what she really feels, who she truly is, as a way to maintain this perfect, pristine, and pure image. Apple White has to be perfect until she fulfills the Snow White legacy, so she'll be whatever people need her to be to get there. But when cracks start to appear on the glass, can Apple keep hiding herself away as her story's thrown amok? As mentioned, Apple and Raven were close childhood friends, but it wasn't just all because of Raven's father, but also Apple's own mother, Snow White, who also agreed to this, seeming so kind and understanding of the situation, wanting nothing more but for the best of the girls. But in reality, she hoped to plant the early seeds of distrust and betrayal amongst them, helping to create a Snow White tale even bigger and better than before, one with drama. I mean, what's more shocking than Apple being poisoned by someone who she loved and trusted, gave everything to, just to have it thrown back in her face by a truly wicked and evil queen? Apple lives for her destiny, determined to guarantee her own and everyone else's happily ever after by any means necessary. I mean, to follow the Storybook of Legends and maintain order is the most sensible thing to do. Without it, we have no idea if people will disappear, stories change, the world succumbs to darkness. Despite wanting to generally help people's stories, her kindness can come across as forced. She puts all her energy into socializing academic pursuit, trying to find ways of bettering others who might not fit into the typical status quo. Yet Apple doesn't entirely fit in herself either, having broken up with daring Charmin just before school was back in session. It was nothing to do with him. They were childhood sweethearts after all, and he did his best to treat her well and make her comfortable. But something just felt missing between them. And she'll love him eventually once her story plays out anyway, so despite everything, why does Darling Charming sit on her mind so often? What is it that draws her in so much when she sees her sword training, or strutting down the hall? Oh, you thought I was gonna leave Appling out my generation? Nah, Applin Nation, let me hear you make some noise! Out of most of the cast, Apple will definitely be the last to rebel, taking place much later in the story. Apple is saved from a poison apple by Darling, reversing her own tale with Darling being the one poisoned into a coma. Her destiny. The one thing Apple clung to fulfill, to show her mother she's worthy of this family's legacy. And with nothing left to lose, Apple finally hits a snapping point, opening up about hating the royals, being prescribed a fate by your parents they'll never live up to, forced to love and marry who they want, never once ever being free to truly be happy. But just as much, she hates the rebels too, not following your destiny for something you don't know, not considering all those that will get hurt or disappear for your choices, not even having a solution for the end of the world before making such a big choice without ever even consulting her, confiding with her, asking if she would rebel too. Apple just wants to be Apple. The real Apple. And with this fairy tale already out of control, Apple takes control as the hero of her tale, and through True Love's kiss, she wakes Darling, demanding that the both of them write a better tale together, and one where she gets to be saved at least once by her knight in shining armor. And with Apple becoming a rebel, finally refusing to sign the book, it's now up to the girls to find a solution to rewrite the Storybook of Legends and save the world from an era of darkness. But can they truly do it? Is there really a solution? And here's Apple finished up. Not too different from the initial concept apart from a few swap colours, but still the iconic Apple we all know and love. I especially love how the corset detailing turned out, all topped off with that white bow. Once again, would this work on a doll? Probably not without everything having to be a printed pattern, but a lot more plausible than Raven's design at least. But at this point, I'm just drawing detailed outfits for fun, so who cares? I like her and I hope you do too. Now for our first Wonderlandian, we have the ever so bubbly Maddie Hatter, daughter of the Mad Hatter, 11th generation, and despite her royal standing and beliefs, she's a rebel who trusts Raven enough to stand by her side for such a big decision. For her concept, Maddie was actually one of the first ones I drew, as I just had such a strong idea in mind already for her. Mostly because Maddie's actually one of my favourite characters, not only because she's a Gemini like me, but because of how funny, caring, resourceful, and just well designed she is. She's such a breath of fresh air in writing a character who's quirky, silly, unserious, without that solely being who she is or relies on. Now, you might be wondering, if she's my favourite character in all of Ever After High, why didn't I mention her doll as one of my favourites? Well, that would be because I think most Maddie dolls just don't look like her. Like, don't get me wrong, they're all incredibly well designed and thought out, but none of them ever actually capture Maddie's face correctly for me. The closest I think would be the Powerful Princess tribe, where I feel they got her cheeky grin right, but even then, it doesn't jump out to me as a must-have sort of doll, you know? Anyway, because of this, I wanted to make Maddie really cheeky, with a big grin and large eyes. I also thought to mix her up from her dad by making her more sweet Lolita themed, with her outfit featuring more frills and lots of tea and dessert references, her hair being curlier and tied to 2 big pigtails, and just a lot of strawberry and cherries dotted around. My personal favourite touch is when I changed her bag from being the old teapot design to a repurposed jam jar with a spout. To be honest, this design is more of a reimagining of Maddie than a redesign, because I already think her OG design was just so iconic and well put together. Despite that though, I'm still going to try and add my own twist, so let's get into her character and story. Maddie is a strange one to a lot of people in Bookend. Having moved a few years back to open a cafe and tea shop, the Hatters were known for being rather eccentric and unconventional, but to them that's just the average Wednesday. She takes pride in being a Wonderlandian and doesn't hide her culture or behaviours because of it. Even if it means she doesn't fit in very often, she never felt deterred to transfer back to Wonderland. Once it came to high school enrollment, in fact, she embraces new places and challenges. A little like Alistair, she's curious to learn more about the other realms that exist, to take in all of the world and bring that knowledge back to help future Wonderlandians or lost travellers who wind up at her tea parties. Which, speaking of, Maddie's mad. Do you see what I did there? Having worked at her dad's shop, she's always been offered the freedom to be who she wants to be in life, because a Hatter can achieve anything, as long as they set their mind to it. But despite this, Maddie's still ever so keen on taking over the Mad Hatter role. Having seen all the different ways people like their drinks, the emotions they express as they sit and eat, the changing of seasons and changing of customers, she came to appreciate the joy of uplifting people's days through the tea she pours, and the pastry she bakes, and the pastry she bakes. And the pastry she breaks. Oh my god, breaks! And the pastry she bakes. She even took over the responsibility of managing the afternoon tea party sessions for her dad as practice, which mostly goes off without a hitch. Although creating a new menu each time has led to a few food combinations she has since learned are not how you say edible or even legal, which ties back into all her dessert and sweet theming added into her outfit. But regardless, this just inspires her to bake even more, taking part in the school's cooking club led by Ginger Bee House, who shares her same passion for experimenting with food. While Raven and Apple may be close childhood best friends, with a strange relationship with the whole "I'll poison you" thing, Raven and Maddie are no question asked best friends, having met after Maddie and her father first moved, and hitting it off immediately, with both girls bonding over their struggle to really fit in, and the judgmental looks they receive for just being themselves. Something that starts to matter a little less when you have someone else to share it with. Raven never truly got to open up so much with Apple, but with Maddie, she felt like an open book, being able to say what she wants and being heard, because while the Hatters might not be the most conventional, they know the importance of listening to others. How else would you throw a good tea party? I also decided that it'd be funny if Maddie and Kitty Cheshire were actually related as cousins. Just explain why they both have similar cheeky smiles, or that maybe that's just something Wonderlandians have. Always got something to grin and smirk about, I guess. But also give reason for them both having fourth wall breaking powers too. I'm not sure whose aunt or uncle they'd share, but for now let's just say that Cheshire Cat's sister married the Mad Hatter, making them cousins. But because of that, they already know each other, and are both finding their way in Ever After High ever since Kitty transferred over, and with each wanting to follow their fate, they actually get along pretty well, being able to understand each other in a different wavelength, and help reduce feeling homesick. Plus, Maddie always loves to throw a private tea party just for the two of them to catch up, and indulge in a little gossip around the school. I think, like Raven, Maddie would also be a very early rebel, witnessing Raven's refusal to sign a storybook, and watching the school slowly turn on her, but seeing a friend in trouble, she immediately stands by her side with no questions asked. Despite doing what any best friend would and supporting them, Maddie also believes in what Raven's saying and standing for. Destiny should be made by the freedom of choice, not by force. Even if it means compromising her fate as the next Mad Hatter, someone shouldn't be made into something they're not. Okay, Queen for the people, let's go. While Maddie trusts Raven, she does have her reservations, and having skim-read a bit further into the story, she knows things aren't going to be easy, and the consequences are definitely going to start taking a toll. But to keep it spoiler-free, she'll keep it bottled up to herself. Besides, they're bound to forge a new happy ending for everyone, right? Maybe she should have read a little bit further. And here's Maddie all done, and I love how she turned out. She feels the most similar to her original design, but shifted in a slight different direction for a whole new take, and I especially love how her face turned out. She looks so cute and welcoming, plus the little dimples on her cheeks. Mattel, I am begging you, please bring my girl back. The world needs Maddie Hatter again. Either way, I really love how she looks, and I hope you do too. From her bed rising from slumber, we have Briar Beauty, daughter of Sleeping Beauty, 4th generation and a royal. For her concept, it was a little like Raven's, where I had to refine the idea over time. What I knew I wanted was something that looked like fancy frilly pajamas, but also passed for an everyday outfit, to give the idea that she gets up and goes straight out to the world, but also can just fall back asleep any minute, with the initial concept being a mix of Sabrina Carpenter and Hime Garu. Something to lean into her party girl nature, but also use the makeup to make her eyes look more droopy and sleepy. However, I wasn't really feeling the blouse was working, nor the PJ bell bottoms, so I went back to the drawing board, and after leaning much more into the Garu aspect, I finally got something I was happy with. And now Briar has her hair bumped up in the back and all wavy, filled with her iconic pink streaks, but also some blonde to help give a Neapolitan colour scheme. She has a lacy night mask instead of glasses, this cute Garu pajama blouse I found, her rose petal shorts, some fishnets, which like Mattel would never approve of, so just imagine they did, these fluffy furry leg warmers, tall slipper looking pumps, and of course can't forget her heart-studded purse that she repurposes as a pillow whenever she gets tired in class. Also, her makeup is a bit of a trust the process type of thing going on, so I promise it looks better in the finished result, but with that, let's just hop into Briar's character and story, shall we? As some of you with more keen eyes and ears might have spotted, unlike the other girls being 11th, 12th or 13th generation, Briar is just 4th generation of the family. Unlike the other stories who repeat their fairy tales every 30 to 50 years, Sleeping Beauty's story requires a cursed sleep of up to 100 years, meaning they're always skipping a generation or two before awakening and having to adjust to a whole new world and pass the curse to the next of kin. So Briar already feels a lot of pressure from her legacy, having seen her mother struggle to learn and adapt to their new world since hers was 100 years ago. It makes her even more reluctant to go along with fate, but by signing the book she ensures stability in the world for people to keep experiencing their lives and for her mother and father not to disappear. So she's happy doing her part, even if something feels wrong about it. Because of all that, Briar chooses to live in the moment, keeping up her bubbly party girl personality, who embraces any challenge without fear. Secret party in the Enchanted Woods? Let's go. Fishing at Bookend Pond? Why not? Skydiving from the giant beanstalk? Absolutely. If she only has a few more years free, Briar might as well live it up now, even if she's putting herself out there too much, regardless of the danger. She'd also really just love to travel the realms, experience all the different cultures, maybe even get into media and magazine publishing, since she always loves reading a good fashion, lifestyle, or travel magazine. Despite sleeping for 100 years, Briar wouldn't be alone. Apart from the stranger who'll wake her up, she'll have Fable Fawn, the soon-to-be dark fairy who curses her. While it might seem complicated wanting to befriend your soon-to-be villain, it's already water under the bridge for Briar. After all, just as how she can't control her own fate, neither can Fable. Why should she punish her for being forced to be bad? Especially having seen how Raven proves birthright has no connection to wickedness. Despite things seeming all pleasant, Briar still keeps a distance between the two, never introducing her to her friend group, not inviting her to parties often, rarely talking in the hall, almost like she's some dirty secret to her, which works for Briar as she likes to keep her pastoral life and fairy tale life separate, for her to enjoy each to the fullest. But maybe she should consider how Fable feels once in a while. Things aren't always as nice and clean as they appear on the surface, and maybe by keeping those two worlds separate, she's doing more damage than she realizes. Briar has also known Apple and Raven since childhood, and while not as close, still counts both of them as reliable friends, and knows more about their real sides. So when the choice arises, she stands as a royal to support Apple, believing that it's right to protect the world and its people, even if she thinks Raven has a point. However, Briar and Apple would later come to conflict over this decision, with Briar finding Apple's hypocrisy for wanting to help people, when she's privileged enough to get a good story.
You get poisoned for what, like a week?
To force a choice onto people when it comes to their future isn't fair, but is it fair for Briar to risk her loved ones in Fable too? I think Briar's rebellion would happen around a midway point in the story, with her leaving Apple to stand by Raven's side, finally deciding what her own destiny will be, and staying with the friends and family she has now, in this moment. Restarting her life with a stranger in a new world isn't really her vibe, you know? However, just because it's easy for her to decide, doesn't mean it is for Fable, who was told time and time again they'd fulfill their fate together, yet without even a single thought or discussion, Briar just turns her back on her? While Briar may have picked Raven's side, Fable chooses Apple, firmly standing by her, flipping the dynamic of who you would perceive as good and bad, although I suppose we don't fully know Fable's story yet either. And here's Briar all finished, and she was definitely a process for me. I do love how she ended up turning out, but I wish I managed to work a bit more magenta or pastel pink into the overall design, sort of like my concepts. But with the black and pink Garu style, she definitely stands out and has a bold look to her compared to the rest of the girls. Plus, I love how her shoes, bag, and hair turned out, so regardless, it's still a favourite for me, and I hope you like it too. A girl who sings to the birds and mice, distracting herself from the dark path that lay ahead, we have Ashlynn Ella, daughter of Cinderella, 12th generation, and a secret rebel. For her concept, I wanted to try something very, very different. Since I already love the OG Ashlynn with her unique silhouette with the puffy sleeves, a very different skirt design, and a bumper up hairstyle, I thought why try and stick to the formula like I did with Apple and Maddie when I'm probably not going to do her justice. So with Ashlynn, I completely flipped it. I wanted to make her more of a trendsetter, since she makes her own clothes and accessories, standing out a little bit more as modern compared to the other girls, with her cardigan, 2-layered blouse dress, these lace leg warmers covering her glass slippers, and a beret filled with needles as if it were a pincushion. She's got a long flowing ponytail with a single braid curling round it to help always put focus on her outfits, and I ended up changing her bag from the OG clock, which was already such a beautiful design for a bag, to a carriage to reference the carriage Cinderella took to the ball. She's also a little curvier with lots more freckles because I just thought she looked cute like that. Now let's move on to her tale. Ashlynn Ella is a polite and well-mannered girl who takes great pride in helping those around her. Unlike Apple, who lavishes in being a royal and a princess, Ashlynn was taught by her mother, Cinderella, at a young age to be humble and acknowledge the privilege of being born a princess, using it to advocate for both what's right and good, always offering a helping hand no matter who needs it. Because of this, she tends to stick out at formal events, knowing her basic etiquette and dance moves, but always struggling with talking to other royals, who always seem to speak about what they'll do to help when they're older and take over the kingdom, but never about what they're doing to help now. Although appearing as a wallflower to others, Ashlynn actually has a lot to say. She just chooses to say it to the animals in the woods, an ability to understand them being passed down from her mother, and the one thing about her fate she's grateful for. Besides, Ashlynn prefers to be in her studio anyway, designing outfits for others to wear. Having heard Cinderella's stories when she was young, about how she'd create her own outfits and dresses with the help from the mice and birds when she was a teen, despite the whole family predicament, Ashlynn was inspired to create as well, choosing to work at a local boutique where she claims it's because of the amazing shoe selection, always finding the right pair for an outfit, but in secret, she loves to work in her little studio in the back, designing something bold and statement-worthy. Is it really fashionable if it doesn't draw people's attention? However, she worries about her mother's opinions on this secret hobby, especially when she hasn't been so well as of late, being bedridden once again. Besides, what would others think if they all knew she had little to no interest in shoes? Isn't that Cinderella's whole thing? But shoes don't make up a whole outfit, and Ashlynn wants to go all out with her creativity and dress people head to toe. It was during one of Ashlynn's woodland excursions that she eventually ran into Hunter, a character she thought the animals were just making up because who had ever seen a guy erratically training in the woods all hours of the day? Yet, here he was, asking if she understood the animals too. While Hunter understood them via their behavior and gestures, he was enamored by Ashlynn's understanding of their speech, and with each curious to learn the other's technique, they made an agreement. They were planned to meet up from time to time in secret to carry out some animal lessons, sharing their knowledge and skills. Although it was a lot easier for Ashlynn to learn the animals' behaviors than it was for Hunter learning their speech, although he at least has a grasp on a few words now. What started off as finally finding a friend that they could understand and confide in with their secret hobbies and love for nature slowly started blossoming into something else that neither of them could really believe, or rather, wasn't sure that they could even have. It was upon one secret meetup that was barely a lesson at all, where Ashlynn had offered Hunter a custom-made hoodie after he had mentioned getting too many holes in his last one, and Hunter offered a basket with an assortment of flowers he had collected to be used as unique dyes for her clothes. And it was then that the two realized that they might have found something other than a friend in the woods. Knowing this conflicted with both their destinies, a secret was made, choosing to date out of prying eyes and judgment until their stories began to play out when they'll totally stop dating for real. Like, actually, this is just a one-time thing and never again. Because of all this, I think Ashlynn will rebel quite early. Having her secret threatened to be outed to the whole school, she takes things back into her own hands and proudly proclaims her love for Hunter, her boyfriend. She doesn't need to wait around for some stranger to swoop in and love her when she already found love herself. And besides her relationship status, she doesn't want her destiny to lead to her mother and father's untimely and early deaths. While it's something out of her control due to the circumstances of the Cinderella tale, she already feels responsible enough for her mother becoming bedridden. So besides the risk of disappearing and an era of darkness, she has nothing left to lose, and embraces being a rebel, hoping for a better future for everyone. And here's Ashlynn all finished, and she surprisingly turned out to be one of my faves. I was a little worried she might have appeared too modern and stand out against the rest of the cars, but I think that works in her favour, looking like a fashion designer that takes risks. And while I love the lace leg warmers, and I think it makes for a campy reference to her original glass slippers that spiraled up her leg, and her focus on fashion design rather than shoes, I did make a variation without them just so you can see the detail in the slippers. But now her legs look so empty. Either way, she's one of my favourite colour-wise, and she looks super cute, so I hope you like her too. And with that, we're done with the first lot of G2 Ever After High characters, and I hope you like them so far. I know this is a little different from my usual video writing, as I tend to talk about the process of making the characters as opposed to their personality and stories, but I think if I'm going to label something a rewrite, I should probably talk about the elements I'm rewriting with them, which I hope was at least a little bit interesting. I should probably mention I've not actually read the books, just watched the show, specials and webisodes. I know, but just bear with me. I've only just started listening to the first book via audiobook, which Anarchii, who you should totally check out their channel, hooked me up with. So maybe let me know how different the book is down below, because I definitely feel like some of the concepts and relationships I pitched are probably more developed in the books than they are the show. And once again, thank you Anarchii for the link to the audiobook. My favourites out of the lot definitely have to be Ashlynn, Raven and Maddie, but I'd love to hear who yours were down below, or maybe even who you'd love to see in a part 2, because this story is far from over. I also hope you like my idea for the Storybook of Legends. I wanted to give the whole concept a bit more intrigue, by having the stories be a process forced to repeat over and over as a solution to the end of days. However, a flawed system is obviously going to have flaws, and it's hitting its breaking point, so it's up to the next generation to find a solution that the previous had failed in doing so. I also wanted the importance of Raven and Apple being the first fairy tale to start the book, meaning their conflict in signing jeopardizes everyone else's chances at their happily ever after. This in turn makes Raven seem way more rebellious, but also doing something dangerous, especially with the rumor, or rather curse, about people disappearing if you refuse to sign coming true, as certain characters and fairies will cease to exist without their role to fulfill. But who could those characters be? And will they come back? Guess you'll just have to find out. But despite the struggle, it makes this ever more worth fighting for, with the increase in rebels symbolizing the goal and struggle for change and a better future. Meanwhile, I was hoping to push Apple as a bit more of a rival or anti-hero, aware that she's being pushed into a life and fate that's not really suited for her, but one that ensures everybody's safety and happiness, including her parents. So she goes along with the belief she's saving the world the right way, just like her ancestors have, unaware that commitment to tradition and order, even if for the better good, is trapping her more and more in that glass coffin, isolated and alone. If only there was a princess in shining armor who could support her in leaving her own prison. Ultimately, the adults have failed another generation, just as theirs did them, but despite the world's impending end, with the era of darkness, it will be the next generation who will unite their hope, their dreams, and their determination to bring in a new chapter to this story, and finally close off the past. I'm sure it all comes off as a little preachy and way too much for like a kid's preteen demographic, but you know, this is my video, so I get to write this how I want. How about them apples? Now, before I wrap up for real, I just want to give a quick shout out and recommend some of my personal favourite Ever After High redesign fits that you should totally watch too if you're looking for more of this. First up, we have Octodrawn, who was one of my biggest inspirations for this vid. I love the whole presentation in the videos, and they even revisited their designs in a recent vid, so I'd really recommend checking it out. Next, we have Baby Carrot Art, who picked a fun selection of characters, picking between 3 main characters and 3 side characters to mix things up. Plus the outfits and the way they draw faces is just so good, I'm jealous. Furthermore, we have Zomberry, whose rendering style is just mwah. Their Raven design changed lives. Plus it has some Bunny Blanc appreciation, and that girl really needs it. I mean, just look at her, okay, don't look at her, get out, go watch Zomberry's video. You wanna watch Zomberry's video real bad. Oh, you wanna watch Zomberry's video real bad. What the f am I doing? And last but not least, we have Inkiio, which feels a bit of a cheat since that video has like over 90k, so you've probably already seen it yourself. But it's been 6 months and I'm just saying, I'm still waiting on part 2. Where is it? Where is it, Inkiio? I've been waiting. Where is it? I want my part 2. You haven't done my girl Ashlynn yet. No, but seriously, it's a great video and you should definitely check it out. Just like how you should check out all these videos. But with all that out of the way, I hope you had a good time watching and have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. See ya!